The Foundation Skills Assessment Test, or the FSA, is handed out annually to kids in grades 4 through 7. Beginning today, students across the province will be sitting down to write them, and the test is meant to offer a snapshot of how kids are doing academically. But for years, critics, including the BC Teachers Federation, have been saying it's time to retire the test altogether. They say the test does not accurately measure learning. And for more on this, we're joined by Carol Gordon. She's the president of the BC Teachers Federation. She's been good enough to join us in studio this morning. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
What are the BCTF's main concerns with the Foundation Skills Assessment? Because this is something that you've had a problem with for some time.
It's been a long time, and how we started and where we've ended up is also a bit different. One of the most harmful things I think about the FSA is that it's being misused by the Fraser Institute and in some cases realtors to rank schools and rank neighborhoods, which is really harmful to students, harmful to parents, I think, and families, and to the staff. At schools shouldn't be ranking schools based on the test scores of 8-year-olds and 11-year-olds, right? It just doesn't make sense.
Why not? Why doesn't it make sense?
Well, we do this in October. They're grade 4 students. They've just started. We're just building relationships in grade 4. They've moved from primary to intermediate. And, a multiple choice, long 6 hours worth of testing can break those relationships. And so it's not helpful to do that. And it's definitely not what we should be ranking schools on. The culture, the relationships that we build in schools is the most, effective way to take a look at what a school is. Walk in the doors and you'll have a good understanding of what a school's like.
Well, sure, but you also want to know that your kid is going to excel academically. And so if we're not ranking schools by, test scores, how should we be ranking them? Is there anything measurable that we can do to assess whether a school is a good school or a bad school? I
think parents know with how their students are doing in their classrooms, and that's the most important thing. Students, first of all, should know how they're doing. And so the assessments that we do in classrooms all the time, some of them are really sort of one-to-one reading. We're reading with students. We're doing, working with manipulatives and math. We're having conversations, moving students along on their learning. Those are the most important kinds of assessments that we do and work towards evaluation. And then there's big ones like school-wide rights. There are reading assessments that we do that districts collect as part of the data to see how the system is doing overall, and to see maybe in some cases how the curriculum is doing. And that's part of our concern is we're not really connecting to the curriculum that we're actually teaching students, and we've revised that.
And you're worried about the data being misused, but how is it being used legitimately, or is it by the province? Because it's the province that conducts these tests.
They're collecting the data, and I think they're taking a look at how students are doing overall, trying to see what does the system need. And I think you could ask any teacher and they know what does the system need in order to help students. Teachers need more time. Teachers need time to actually help students learn. We don't need to add more and more testing. We know how our kids are doing through the assessments that we do all the time. And so, what we need is more resources. We need more people. And if we're not actually using the data to figure that out and driving resources into the classroom, we're really not meeting the purpose of why we would want to do an assessment.
We hear more and more from universities that there are kids who are showing up to universities and writing applications, and they just don't have a lot of basic skills. They're graduating from high school without being able to really write very well in a lot of cases. How are you supposed to make sure that doesn't happen? How do you make sure the kids are leaving high school with, the essentials that they're going to need if they're going to pursue a career?
Well, I don't think you do that with a grade 4 and grade 7 assessment, first of all, the FSAs. I think we can take a look at secondary schools, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong, and how we help students get to graduation. Not everybody's heading to university. That's not a goal of every student, and it's not even necessarily the goal of the K-12 system is to drive kids to university. There's lots of choices for kids when they get out of grade 12, and so what we want to do is ensure those who are wanting to go to university have all the tools that they need. Those who are going into other post-secondary means have the tools that they need as well. And so there's lots of choices in secondary schools that kids can have in order to meet what their goals are in life.
But what I mean is, and I take your point, but what I mean is that if we don't measure skills in one way or another, how do we know where kids are?
Well, and I think that's a myth. I think we're measuring how kids are doing all the time in our classrooms. Secondary school teachers
So what's the matter with another test then?
Well, I think this one is high stakes. I think we turned it into a high stakes test where we start ranking schools with FSAs with one single test, and that's the measure of whether or not a school is good or not. that's problematic, and that makes it high stakes.
Well, and it's one test on one day.
Yeah, exactly.
You are counseling parents. You often encourage parents not to, or to excuse their kids from the test. Why do that? Don't you just skew the results, and the Fraser Institute gets more fodder?
Yeah, no, I think if we've always said that if you're going to do it, we think that it's okay to look at the system. We want to know the system and how the system is doing. We think there needs to be more time and resources put into the system in order to help kids. What we say is that if you're going to do a system test, then random sampling is always the best way. It's a study of some kind in a way of looking at it. And so if people withdraw their kids, like I did, both my kids never wrote an FSA, and I always knew how they were doing because I knew I could go and talk to the teacher. And so I think it's fine. You end up with enough data that the ministry wants with those who choose to withdraw their children.
A shout out to counselors as well. Carol Gordon, thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you being here. Carol Gordon, president of the BC Teachers Federation.